Good morning, fellow preppers. How are you today, this fine day for prepping? Gas prices are volatile. They're out of control. It's weird. They're going up and then down. And from what we've seen, as far as the news articles go, we're only going to be seeing an increase in gas prices as winter continues, which is typically opposite of what we see. We usually see gas prices in the summer going up and the winter kind of going down a little bit. But of course, a lot of this happens because of Russia cutting off the fuel supply to Europe, and the whole market is because of this. Again, it's just volatile. Now, I want to go more into just gasoline for just a moment, so bear with me, but stay to the end because I think you're going to be shocked in seeing how things are transpiring. I know I was doing the research for this. But let's go ahead and look at our first article. The first article talks about, look at this, Iran plans to send missiles, drones to Russia for Ukraine war, officials say. Now, this is only a few days ago, October 16th. And as we know, Russia has already been using some of these different types of kamikaze drones, as they call them, to attack Ukraine. And the Ukrainians have actually had a pretty good role of trying to shoot them down just with small arms. But that's not the point. Iran is strengthening its commitment to supply arms for Russian assault in Ukraine, according to U.S. and allied officials. The increased flow of weapons from Tehran could help offset the Biden administration sending weapons on this side. Sounds like Vietnam all over again, doesn't it? Continuing an apparent sign of Iran's expanded role as military supplier to Moscow, is dispatched officials to Russia to finalize terms for additional weapon shipments, including 2 types of Iranian surface missiles, which, of course, is going to be bad news for the Ukrainians. Because what we've seen, when we talk about these drone kamikazes, they've sold so far, by the way, 2,400 of these to Russia. And from what I understand and from what I've read, the accuracy is not incredible on them, but they pack a punch. And when they hit, they'll blow up major parts of a building. Like the United States, we actually have our own kamikaze drones, but they're actually much more guided. You can actually much more of a surgical strike and a much smaller explosion. But apparently these ones from Russia are devastating and actually hitting a lot of civilian casualties as well, which of course in wartime is you don't do that. So again, this video is more about gas. It's less about the drones being sent from Iran. But we have to understand that it is all connected, because we've mentioned this economic agreement many times between 5 countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Spell that together. That's BRICS. And this BRICS agreement makes it so those 5 countries help each other out. And just as Russia ceased its fuel oil going to Europe, which is causing major problems in Europe. Have you seen the riots happening in Paris? Partly because of fuel oil, other problems too, but they're talking about not having enough fuel oil to keep warm in Europe this winter, which, watch it guys, we're definitely going to see more riots because of this. It's going to cause countries to become unstable. It's that simple. But as they're basically shutting off the gas supply to Europe, they're increasing the gas supply to other countries that are part of this BRICS. Now, Iran is not part of BRICS yet. They've actually applied to be part of BRICS. And it seems to me, in my uneducated political viewpoint, I would say they're probably doing this, sending or selling these drones to Russia, simply just as a part to kind of like grease the wheels and saying, hey, look, in Iran, we can actually help you out and we'd be a good ally to include us in BRICS as well. If you're asking my opinion, I think they're going to accept them. Now, as this is happening, of course, the Biden administration, we're not tapping into our gas reserves here in the United States. We're not tapping into the gas reserves in Canada. The Biden administration is shutting down the pipelines of fuel oil to the United States, starving us in fuel oil as well. Gas prices through the roof. As he, instead of opening up in the United States for more gas production, he goes to Iran. Iran, sell us oil. Iran, it amazes me for the fact that Iran says, United States, we would love to kill you. We would love to send a nuclear bomb to you. And there's Biden saying, hey, will you sell us some gas? I don't get it. And of course, we also know he went to Saudi Arabia and begged for them to open up the fuel spigot, so to speak. And they did a little bit, but of course now have shut it down and have actually seriously decreased in Saudi Arabia the amount of fuel oil coming to the United States by 2 million barrels a day. And of course, Biden responds by taking even more fuel oil from our strategic reserve, which I talked about in the past videos. He's setting us up for failure for the fact that fuel wins wars. And I am the first one to tell you, I have no interest in our country and our children and our families going to war. I have zero interest in that, none whatsoever. But it seems to be especially in the Biden administration. That's what they're trying to ramp it up for. Because if you actually listen to his talking, he'll actually say things like, guys, we're going to war. And so it's like the same rhetoric trying to suck us into another major escalation. And unfortunately, it's coming. I believe it's going to happen. And again, my best guess is probably next year sometime it's going to start. But we're already seeing the ramping up of this as Iran is sending the drones to Russia, but even more importantly, actually making connections with Russia by them also not selling us fuel oil. That's fine. But what about Saudi Arabia? Saudi Arabia, of course, has been cutting off the fuel oil, and Saudi Arabia is saying, first off, they're saying they can't stand Biden. Okay, but they're actually saying more specifically that, oh, look, the amount of commerce and the recession that our country's in, even though the Biden administration will not say we're in a recession, we are in a recession. Saudi Arabia is really simple. They're simply saying that, oh, look, you don't have as much commerce going on, so we're going to not send as much oil to you guys because you're not using it, and therefore the prices need to stabilize. Which kind of makes you say that kind of makes sense. But again, I think they're basically giving good old Biden the finger, as a lot of people in the country are as well, and basically the way things are not being handled, I should say. I was going to say being handled, but they're not being handled. Okay, but let's go ahead and go back to talk about fuel oil overall, and here's actually what I want you to see about this. This is very interesting. This article just came out, let's see, I just saw that. Oh yeah, August 4th. So we're only talking about, 2 months ago. Iran and Saudi Arabia battle for supremacy in the Middle East. Now, I don't even need to go through this article, and I'm not going to, because when it comes to those two countries, Iran and Saudi Arabia, they've been in basically a Cold War. They've been in a de facto state of war. They've actually been in a actual battles war, a war for economics. They do not get along at all. And so as Iran applies to become part of BRICS, Saudi Arabia also applies to become part of BRICS. Did you realize that? Both of these countries are now joining the same side, and guess what? That side is not the United States. That side is Russia. And no matter what you look at how this politically speaking, what it means for us is we're in trouble. Not only is Europe in trouble, they're in far more trouble than we are as far as oil reserves and keeping warm this winter, but we're going to be paying for it at the pump this winter as well. Because Saudi Arabia has made it absolutely clear they have no interest in making dealings with our government. And of course, on top of this, if you didn't see this, Biden had threatened to cut off weapons for Saudi Arabia, which, if you understand it, Trump did the same thing for Ukraine. He actually threatened to cut off armaments for Ukraine because of Hunter Biden's laptop, and he was impeached because of this. And that was actually kind of like a little secret thing he tried to do. Biden has made it clear. He publicly said, we're going to cut off your armaments unless you do this. That's impeachable. We're not getting into the politics of impeaching Biden. Okay, but it is talking about basically this whole thing is escalating and causing more problems because Biden tried to do this to try to make it look like, oh, look, our gas prices are going to be stable. He said, guys, just hold off on cutting off that 2 million barrels a day until basically, in essence, after the elections because he wants to make himself look good. He needs all the help he can get, looking good, by the way. All right, so here's what we see. Saudi Arabia and Iran previously had hated each other, wanted to kill each other, annihilate each other, but now because they have both applied to be part of BRICS, let's go back to our articles and let's look at our last article. The Saudi FM says, we intend to build a positive relationship with our neighbors in Iran. This is crazy. And I mean, crazy, it's always good to have peace, but literally they're going through a situation, which you can read through these articles if you like on your own, and they're trying to make it so now they're allies after all these years. Why is that? Because now they just want to be cozy. It's all about BRICS. It's all about this Russian alliance. It's kind of like, think of it almost like a new Warsaw Pact. Just like NATO, the Warsaw Pact was militaristic, but BRICS, even though right now it's not militaristic, it's economic, could easily turn that direction as well. And we're seeing a new Cold War building. Well, is it a Cold War? It very well could be a new hot war. It could easily turn into battles in all-out World War III, which again, I'm afraid, I don't want to say this, I think is going to happen. So we need to continue preparing for this. Getting all the food and all the stuff you need for your house. I know a lot of people right now are talking about radiation and things like that. I'm not going to say it's not going to happen. I don't think it will. But you know what? in this channel, we say it's better to be safe than sorry. Well, we actually say it's better to prep than be fearful, because a lot of things that are coming down the line right now over the next 6 months, over the next year, are going to be absolutely frightening. So we need to prepare now while we still can. And we do have some time. Even though time is short, the grocery stores still have a lot of stuff in stock. So make sure you do what you can for you and your family, and even your neighbors too. Because Russia right now is growing in strength, while the United States is dwindling. Think about that and think where it leads to.